Hi Chris, how are you?
All is well here, Rod. Here we are. It's episode 208. It's the 18th of January, 2026, which is crazy. So we're halfway through the first month. Bonkers. And it's very damp. It's not raining, but there's been a lot of rain. So everywhere's very damp and soggy, and it feels like it's 6 o'clock in the evening, but it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How about you?
Exactly the same. I don't have it quite so much rain, but it's just sort of that overcast. It's been raining. Everything's wet. There's water on absolutely everything that you touch kind of way. It looks like a mossy kind of day. It's that got a feel around it. Yeah,
we had a lot of low-hanging fog, and the walk to my shed is a little treacherous as I have to go down the grass, and I'm always worried I'm going to tip over at some point. But anyway, I made it to the shed. We were all right.
Well done. You've stepped up for the podcast purposes, and you've made it all the way down the shed. So I approve of your bravery there, Chris.
And I pre-warmed the shed. So shout out to a local, actually they're quite local to me, but a company beginning with a big D, and their heater that they do with an app, because it's actually been bulletproof for about the last 4 or 5 years.
Don't give yourself.
No, you're not a fan.
Don't give yourself the big D. That means entirely something else in some parts of the world. Oh. And we have a show title. Should we do some follow-up?
Let's do the follow-up.
So, first off, we have immediate follow-up on our main show from last week, where... That's interesting. We're using a new browser this week, folks. We're on Vivaldi just for a change, for reasons that may become apparent later. But we follow up from last week a couple of stories related to Grok and X and its notification apps. The first one was we were told by the government last week that they'd asked Ofcom, which is one of the departments in the UK that deals with breaches to communications laws, the sort of ombudsman that looks into breaches to communications laws. We're told to look into it quite quickly. Anyway, the committee, a committee from Parliament, has said that they need to get on with it, basically. That's the long and the short of it. The notification ban didn't come into place. They wanted more guidance on what was happening. Were they breaching the law in the UK or not? What actions could be taken? So this was from Dame Chi Onwura, I'm not sure I said that right, Chair of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee, responding to a letter from the Technology Minister, Les Kendall. So stuff is happening in the UK around this anyway.
Just get on and ban it. Like I think we said last week, it was just crazy, wasn't it, that these people are releasing these apps and they're allowing this AI nudification, and I just can't believe we're talking about it. Like, this should have just been stopped day one by the company, and if the company was going with it, then there should be a law to ban it. So come on, let's get this done.
Well, there is a law to ban it, and we talked about Apple having rules in place and Google having rules in place to not allow this stuff. Neither of those companies have done anything either. Grok themselves came back with saying they will no longer edit real people into bikinis. This is from an article on Engadget on the 14th. It's changing its policies. Well done. However, and just in almost real-time follow-up, The Verge then came back with X claims it has stopped doing this, but you can still get it to do it. So, what the hell?
I fear that people are just releasing stuff so quickly now, and I think I said this last week, that there's just no, like, let's just stop and think for a second. And it's possibly also the same then when they're trying to patch some of these issues, they're rushing to patch the issue, but maybe they need to stop and pause for a minute and actually make sure they're doing it properly and addressing all of the edge cases, which obviously in this scenario they are not.
Yeah, so The Verge's testing said you could still, with relatively little amount of input, get them to do this. I mean, Grok's response to this was bad. In the first place, they put a vague paywall in front of it, but you could still get Grok to notify people in replies. They've then said they've changed it, and they clearly haven't, if The Verge are able to do this. So it's all a disaster. It's not even about it being too fast a pace of progress for people to go on and do this. They've no real interest in doing it. In fact, I saw another article this week about one of Elon's ex-wives suing Grok because somebody had notified her on the app. So It's just like, what the hell is happening here? Just stop it. Switch it off.
Yeah, agreed. Just turn it off. As quickly as you released into the world, unrelease it by turning it off. It's
not complicated. Switch it off.
Agreed.
Something else that is complicated, in sticking with Elon for a moment, is that Elon is looking for a $134 billion payout from OpenAI. So Elon was an early investor in OpenAI. I think he put in $79 million or something like that. Certainly tens of millions, $38 million seed funding into OpenAI when it was a launch company, with the intention that we're only ever going to stay open. And Obviously, he's not happy with the fact they went to IPO. He's not happy with the fact that they partnered with Microsoft. He's not happy with the fact he now has a rival LLM chat company like OpenAI, and thinks he's now due $134 billion from OpenAI and Microsoft. He doesn't ask for small amounts of money, does he?
Well, you don't get the richest man to be the richest man in the world by asking for 50 quid, do you? So he's obviously, or his legal team obviously trying to, apportion the amount of money he's owed based upon the size of these deals and that. I mean, it blows my mind every time when we go back to it that Elon was part of OpenAI. And I keep forgetting it. It's just one of those stupid things. Oh yeah, of course he was, because it was all going to be open and a not-for-profit. And it seems weird that Elon, the richest man in the world, is doing something not-for-profit, and he's now fighting for it to be, going against why they've taken it being from not-for-profit to a profit-making organisation. So interesting turn, this one, and like you say, a huge amount of money, absolutely insane. I'm sure they just borrow it off somebody if they have to pay it.
Isn't it weird how he sort of comes and goes from the news, though? When he was doing the Department of Government Efficiency in America stuff, he was everywhere, and then he vanished from that, and he was very quiet for a while, and everything seemed to be trundling along again. Then suddenly he's back in the news with nudification and wanting lots of money, and we're going to talk about him again in a minute. But it's just his news cycle, as his ketamine hits go up and down, is when he comes and leaves the news.
Yeah, it is weird. He's very cyclical, isn't it? He's in, like you say, and then he's out for 3 months, then back with a vengeance. But like on this one, it's multiple fronts. It's not just the one thing. He's back for three very different reasons. Very different reasons.
Moving on, and obviously some of the app marketplaces that Apple are recommending aren't doing so well. Setapp, which is their own app marketplace in rivalry to Riley Tessalt's app in the EU. Setapp is a suite of apps that have been available on the Mac for quite a while, actually. I want to say decades at this point, where you can subscribe to Setapp and you get a bunch of apps, for your monthly subscription, and quite good apps, things like Ulysses and VPNs and all sorts of things like that. Anyway, when the app marketplaces became a thing, Setapp launched alongside of it. Anyway, they're going to shut it down from February the 16th. So I'm not surprised that these things aren't doing so well. Apple should have just allowed them to put the apps on in the first place with alternative payment providers and without the security. We've talked about this a million times. But it's a bit sad to see these things failing like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's sad fame, but do you not think it echoes what we said the other week? Apple, you're stopping these mobile app stores from opening up everywhere. And I think we both agreed on this. It's probably not really hitting their bottom line because people are just so used to the Apple App Store. And lo and behold, everybody's just going to the App Store. And they're not using ones like Setapp. So it doesn't really surprise me that this one's shuttering. But it does make you wonder why Apple's fighting tooth and nail for every last dollar. And yet nobody's really going anywhere else. So, yeah, it is a shame.
It's almost like they've got a monopoly and they can do what they like, really, isn't it?
No comment.
Just a little bit like that, Chris. Just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Speaking of monopolies, Google is also appealing its ruling in the search antitrust case. Apparently, the company was found to maintain a monopoly in 2024. This was agreed by the court. Anyway, it's now 2026, and they've only just filed its appeal for this, that against a federal judge ruling that the company was maintaining a monopoly in search. There can be no doubt that Google's maintaining a monopoly in search. Their argument here is that chatbots, basically LLMs and the rest, have changed the marketplace, that it's no longer just Google. However, Google have got quite a well-regarded chatbot, which we're going to talk about later, called Gemini. I would still very much say that Google have a monopoly on search.
I mean, the fact that people go, I'll Google it, surely demonstrates there is a monopoly. It's a bit like every tablet is called an iPad because Apple, have managed to make that brand work. And people go, don't say tablet really, just go on my iPad, even though they're using an Android device. Google definitely have a monopoly. They've never not had a monopoly for the last 20 years. And I think Gemini, they were behind. Obviously, I think OpenAI came at them a little bit quick and they weren't quite ready. But in fairness to them, and I haven't really used Gemini because I've never really used any of the Google stuff. It does feel like Gemini, from what I've heard and read, is made up the ground to OpenAI very quickly.
Yeah, again, we're going to talk about it in a bit more detail later. However, I quite like this quote in this Engadget article. As we have long said, this is Google, the court's August 2024 ruling ignored the reality people use Google because they want to, not because they're forced to. I think that's slightly disingenuous. Yeah, they are the brand. They are the Kleenex of search, or the Hoover of search, or call it what you want, the iPad of search. But also, it's the default on every device you ever open up.
Yeah, and obviously Microsoft tried for it and are continuing to try to get you back to Bing, but Bing just isn't that good. They are right to a point, though. People aren't forced to use Google, but Google are very good at inserting themselves in, whether it's trying to get you to download Chrome at every opportunity, and they've got that brand cachet of, well, I'm just going to go to Google because it's the only way to find anything kind of thing. Everybody uses Google apart from probably me and you.
Do you think the person on the street could name 3 other search engines?
No, not really. Like, nobody's going to know DuckDuckGo. Bing, doubtful, because it's just nobody knows what Bing is. Not even Microsoft know what Bing is. I doubt it. I really think people would struggle. They'd probably be better naming AI chatbots. They'd probably get open at ChatGPT and Gemini. I think they would struggle to name more than 1 or 2 search engines.
That's interesting, and it's a bit sad, isn't it? If you think where search started back in the day, you and I had Ask Jeeves and Lycos and AltaVista and Yahoo and all the thing, and there are search engines around these days. Let's not ignore the fact there are plenty of alternatives. Again, we might talk about some of them later, but Google is absolutely the dominant force. So, forced, preferred to, it kind of makes no odds. Personally, I don't think Google search is anywhere near as good as it used to be.
See, I've not used it for so long, probably for about 8 to 10 years. I couldn't really tell you. I've never been that wedded to Google.
Well, even though we're using it now, although that's something we may need to think about in the future as well.
We are using it now.
We are using it.
Find an alternative.
Although we have broken away, our show notes are in something different this time, aren't they?
This is true. Yeah, we're trying out what's it called? Proton Drive.
Proton Drive
with
Proton
Docs.
Yeah. And maybe more on that later.
They've clearly got inspiration from somewhere, though. Is the look and feel of it.
But all these things look and feel the same, don't they? I mean, it doesn't matter if you use Pages Online, Google Docs Online, the Microsoft equivalent looks a bit like Word. This is just what it looks like.
True. I think you're right. It's like with the smartphone, isn't it? They all roughly look the same. And it's the same with a Word editing type app. They largely are the same.
Should we do some news?
Let's do the news.
So first up, you and I both like a repairable laptop. I think it's fair to say the framework has turned my head so far I actually bought one that's right here in front of me, parked on my little laptop stand right now.
I think it's not just repairable, it's repairable and upgradable. They're those two things would be cool. I want more of this.
Exactly, and you're going to get more of this, it would seem. So there were a number of laptops at CES this year that from Dell, from HP, and under the radar to me from Lenovo as well. So if you're a road warrior of any sort, I think we actually featured it in one of our favourite computers a couple of podcasts ago. The Lenovo, or at that point IBM ThinkPad, was one of the iconic laptops in the market. And they went a very Apple route over the last few years where they started gluing components into place. You couldn't upgrade them easily, fixed RAM and all the rest of it from the outset. However, the new ThinkPad X1 Carbon Gen 14, snappy title, I quite like the fact they've kept the ThinkPad in there, and the X1 is there. The X1 Carbon has been their sort of premier line for a while. Gen 14 just shows how long it's been around, really. Is upgradable. It has an amazing new motherboard built into it where there's components on both sides of the motherboard. The keyboard is held on magnetically and you can just pop it off without any screws. It's toolless.
That's not just the keyboard, though. That's the whole top case. That's fantastic.
That's true. And you can get in and you can upgrade the SSDs, you can upgrade the memory while maintaining quite a thin form factor. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, and it shows it can be done. And you and I would both lovingly remember, I think on the Mac, I was going to say Mac is probably an iBook, where you'd pop the battery out and you could slide a hard drive in, lift the keyboard out, you could put the Wi-Fi card in, extra RAM. I'd love to be able to do that because like my MacBook, I'm using it more and more. Oh, I wish I got a bigger hard drive in it. And like I said last week, I think it was last week or the week before, even if I had to pay Apple to buy the hard drive, I'd rather do that and pay a bit of Apple tax than to actually have to sell the laptop and buy a whole new laptop, because that feels very wasteful.
I think this couldn't come at a better time that we're seeing the PC industry move towards more repairable laptops, because as we look at the price of components, SSDs, hard drives and graphics card, they're only going up. And it's not going to go away anytime soon. So manufacturers that build their silicon and their memory and their SSDs on die are going to be really paying through the nose for it and then thinking about how they're going to transfer that cost onto consumers. You could sell this with a minimal build and just say, all right, if you want more at some point, upgrade it yourself. And I think it's a very smart move by Lenovo to make a sexy laptop that's upgradable as this, that's capturing the feel of the moment when people do and are interested in sort of the more framework, more open, ability to do exactly what you've talked about. I've got an M2 MacBook is a fantastic laptop. However, it's limited by the RAM that's in there, because Apple for a long time only sold them with 8 gigs of RAM, small SSDs, maybe a 256. Being able to change those things stops it being e-waste effectively in a shorter period of time. This is terrific. I have a ThinkPad that's 10 years old at this point. It's an IBM, it's an Intel 8th generation one, an 8.7 something or other i7. It's a perfectly adequate laptop. I can bang more RAM into it. I can put another SSD in it. It's an excellent laptop, even at that age. Even the battery's still good for about 2 hours, for goodness sake. So I think Lenovo and the rest of them are onto something good with this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And most people, I'm certainly seeing it with my wife, her M1 MacBook is fantastic, but it could do with a bit more RAM. Like you say, it only came with 8 gigs and a bit more storage. But we don't want to swap out the whole laptop just for that. I think Apple should be doing something along this line, and they could do it in an Apple way, and it would be good.
This looks great though, and if it's like previous Lenovo laptops, the keyboards will feel excellent. It still comes with that classic red look that ThinkPads have had forever. It's got the nub if you don't want to use a trackpad, which again they're famous for. And I will say, even considering the age of the laptop, it is the trackpad that's closest to a MacBook that I've experienced. It's a big deal on a laptop.
I think that's fair. I think they're fantastic laptops.
Yeah. Moving on, back to ChatGPT. Apparently, they're going to start producing advertising on there, which is a surprise to probably no one at this point. They need to get their money back. The way you get money back is you get subscriptions or you put adverts on there. I think I read somewhere that they've got 38 million concurrent users occasionally, OpenAI and ChatGPT. That could be a lot of eyeballs looking at your ads.
Wow. I'm not surprised that they're going to do ads. It's a bit like Netflix, isn't it? You can have the cheap tier, but you're going to get some ads. And Amazon's gone that way. A lot of services go that way. So they've just looked at the video streamers, gone, let's do that. They're just doing it a lot quicker than video streamers got around to it.
Yeah, so there'll be this ad-supported tier. There'll be a cheaper, I think it's about $5 or $10 a month, fee for a low-end user that maybe gets access to an old model or a limited number of queries using it. The free one, I've got to say, is fairly open. I don't think I've ever hit the limit for whatever I've need to use it for. Maybe it's because I'm still using my brain occasionally rather than just feeding it all in there. So, I mean, that could be a thought. But yeah, for a company that lost $8 billion in the first 6 months of last year, I'm not surprised that they're looking at alternative ways to get revenue in.
Yeah, true. Especially if they're going to have to pony up that money for Elon.
Yeah, well, there is that, isn't there? That could well put them out of business. And Microsoft will only support that for so long.
Yeah, agreed.
Moving on, and just a very quick story that I thought was interesting. So we've talked about RFK Jr., who's the American health minister, who is, I think it's fair to say, an anti-vaxxer. He's definitely not keen on the use of any sort of vaccines and all the rest of it. What he seems to be in danger of, however, is annoying Big Pharma. Big Pharma has a lot of money in deep pockets, and this pharmaceutical executive, or a number of pharmaceutical executives, so far have been sort of quite coy around Trump and the American government. However, they're now coming back and saying that they're very annoyed about RFK Jr.'s most recent attack on vaccines. So this bodes well that big companies are beginning to speak out against the hegemony of the United States government. And I'd like to see more groups do this. It seems to me that when you push back against what they want, that the government the American government does tend to back down in most cases. I hope that continues to be true as we see what's going on in Denmark and Greenland. But I just thought this was interesting for a group of people to stick their heads above the parapet and actually push back.
Yeah, I completely agree with you here. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't want to go into that about length. I just think it was interesting. Something else that's interesting, sticking with the American government, we'll try not to make it quite too political, but apparently the Secretary of Defense, or I think he's called the Secretary of War now, Musk and Pete Hegseth have been going around saying they want to make Star Trek real. And what they mean by that, and I'm going to come back to this, the arsenal of freedom, because that's the way that they view their all the weapons and things that America has. That's the arsenal of freedom, because America is the freest country in the world. They want to create something like Starfleet Academy. And all you can really say to that is, wow.
Wow. And I mean, that is a job title. What's your job title? Minister of War. Like head of war. I can't remember what you said, but it's like, that is a job title, isn't it? And if you're not at war, you're not doing your job. It's like, I think I prefer Minister of Defence better.
Secretary of Defence. Yeah. But I mean, the point of this is him and Elon were going around going, it's going to be great when we're all in space and all the rest of it. And you can even see him here. He's doing the Vulcan salute, the live long and prosper thing, which I'm going to do to camera now just to prove I can do it. It's not that big an achievement if Pete bloody Hegseth can do it. However, this arsenal of freedom, which they've picked up on here, there was actually a Star Trek The Next Generation episode called The Arsenal of Freedom, and it was about an autonomous weapon that killed its creators and then tried to kill the Enterprise as well. So good messaging on that, Pete. Well done.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, due diligence. I don't really want this kind of thing anywhere near Star Trek. I like my Star Trek where it is. And just to put in here, Star Trek was an optimistic view of the future where humanity had come together. It was accepting of all sexualities, races, languages, differences. There was no money anymore. I mean, it was the ultimate sort of communist utopia in some ways. That's very much not what the current American government wants. So it amuses me no end. This is where they're going with that.
Yeah, it's very different. Been interpreted very differently, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Very differently. Did you use Digg back in the day, Chris?
No.
Digg is a social network that was sort of killed by Reddit and others. It was started by a guy called Kevin Rose, who I think was a venture capitalist. And basically it was the community upvoted interesting stories to the front page. So the more people clicked on it and voted for it, it would bubble to the top. So it was one of the very first websites to do this kind of thing. It went away because, like I say, it was replaced by Reddit and other things. I think Kevin Rose lost interest. Anyway, it's back. It's back in beta as of, I think it was last week it actually came back, and we neglected to report on it. But you can see, for those watching the YouTube video, that it's back. It's exactly as it used to look, with stories bubbling to the top. There's upvotes and downvotes in the stories, and just what's popular will make it to the front page, with decreasing in interest as you go down through it. Considering this has been around and there seemed to be a lot of interest in it coming back, some of these stories aren't very well voted for. I wonder what traffic they're getting compared to other things.
Yeah. It doesn't look great, does it? Like one comment and 3 votes by the looks of it. Yeah, I don't know. It's not for me. But I can kind of see the appeal, I guess. It's an interesting way of finding some different news, I guess.
Yeah, and it is different. Not that different to Reddit if you go to the front page there, which is more or less the same thing. The community reactions to things bubble the popularity to the top. So it's a human algorithm as opposed to an automated algorithm where the idea at the time was instead of the BBC deciding what story should be in the front of the page, the users did by finding it and upvoting it. It's not a new thing anymore. I think Digg had its moment. Fair enough, have a go, but I'm not convinced this will do anything.
No, I agree with you there.
Moving on.
It doesn't feel like this is going to make a big comeback at all.
No, not at all. Moving on and talking about the damage ChatGPT and OpenAI and other things can do. Police chief here in the UK has been caught making use of Microsoft Copilot. He asked Microsoft Copilot about the risk of a particular set of football fans causing violence or being involved with a riot. The chatbot, Copilot in this case, hallucinated that they'd been involved with something before, so he made his decision about allowing them to come into the UK based on that. What a clown.
Wow. That's, I don't even know what to say to that one. I mean, surely you've got staff for this, and even if you did use a chatbot, you'd, go and fact check it maybe before you make a big decision on it.
But this is the danger of these things, is you put your brain on hold and you just accept what they tell you, because they're always wanting to accommodate you. They're always saying, oh, what a great idea. This is great. Oh, here's a thing. And people don't question it. Where are the references? Where's the evidence a lot of the time?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You're right. People don't question it. We're having this debate just where I work. People having to explain to their children, just because you've read it on the internet does not mean it is correct. You do need to fact check it.
Yeah, so I found this quite depressing but unsurprising. It's just a shame of a senior police officer of this level able to make decisions about policing in the UK, and particularly around football matches. We all know how contentious they can be. Decisions like this are being made. So he's had to apologise to MPs. I wonder if he'll stay in a job given the sort of the size of this mistake.
Yeah, agreed on that one.
Anyway, that's that. Should we talk about something more interesting for a minute?
Let's do it.
Or possibly. So Apple actually had news this week. They had some news this week about a couple of things. The first one being that the long-awaited Apple Creator Studio has been announced. So this is a package. This was announced on January the 13th. This is a package of Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Pixelmator Pro, Motion Compressor, and MainStage, plus new AI features come together for premium content in Keynote, Pages, and Numbers in one single subscription. It's not massively expensive. As I scroll through the article to try and find the prices, here we are. It's
$12.99 a month.
It's $12.99 a month unless you're, or $129 a year. Or if you're in education of some sort, it's $2.99 a month or $29 a year, $29.99 per year. So there's that sweet services revenue again, Apple.
Yeah, I mean, they literally announced it the day after they announced that they've got amazing services and that, they're shooting for the sky with all the numbers. Next day, here's a new service. I think, what am I thinking here? I think this isn't too bad because there's a lot of apps, right? I think they've never really charged for these apps. They used to charge for iWork back in the day, then that went away. And you're still going to get iWork being Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. You're still going to get them, but if you want the additional AI stuff, you need to buy this license. They bought Pixelmator a year or two ago. That's now part of this suite. And then the Final Cut, Logic, they've been like a one-time purchase for a number of years on the Mac. And so this seems a fair sort of price. That's a hell of a collection. It's not crazy money. Will I be rushing out to buy it? Probably not. But I do like the look of Pixelmator. I do use the Apple Suite for home things. I don't need any of their real pro tools. So I'm curious to see what it's like. I will certainly give it a go.
So of these, I use Keynote and I use Logic Pro. I use Logic Pro to edit the podcast, which is massively over-engineered for because it's designed for producing multi-track audio for music as much as anything else. It's not specifically designed for doing podcasts, although I have a workflow that makes me quite quick in it. And I use Keynote for a lot of my presentations at work because I like the transitions and things like that. So I've kind of got a foot in both camps. And I bought my Final Cut Pro / Final Motion license a very long time ago. I think it was £300 10 years ago or something like that, and I've been using it ever since. I will not pay this. I don't see enough value in this, and I think them crippling, for want of a better word, Numbers, Pages, Keynote by making, let's face it, when they were talking about Apple Intelligence not that long ago, the things they were talking about, like content-aware fills and all that kind of stuff, would have been things that should have just been built into an incremental upgrade to these apps anyway. I don't think there's enough value in putting what used to be the iWork apps and now don't seem to be badged iWork at all into this. Pages is not a good enough word processor to pay any amount a month for. I know they're still giving it away free, but it doesn't justify that. Numbers is not a good enough spreadsheet tool to justify somebody not using LibreOffice or Google Docs or Proton Docs or there's something else like that. It's a spreadsheet. They're a dime a dozen. Keynote is good enough, but again, I don't think I'd need anything over and above what it already has. So I question the value in that. However, if you're a content creator and you need Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro, and maybe Pixelmator Pro, which again, I don't think many Photoshop experts are going to be jumping up and down on Pixelmator. They're going to continue to pay for Photoshop, or they'll be using Affinity or something like that. I don't think there's enough market embedding in Pixelmator to do this. And I think they killed the other thing. Photomator Pro won't get any further updates on iOS.
No, Pixelmator Classic's gone. And
is Photomator still a thing?
I don't think we know really what they're doing with Photomator.
I think they killed Photomator.
Okay, maybe they have. I'm kind of with you on this. I think I quite like Numbers. I use it only for home, but I'm not doing anything complicated. I'm using it for some home, bookkeeping. I use Pages if I'm doing anything at home. I don't really use Keynote, but I've got them for free. I'm not looking for any more functionality, and I'm certainly not going to pay for any Apple Intelligence until I A, use it a lot, and B, actually shows me that it's worth it. I'm curious. I'm going to have a play with the new Pixelmator Pro. But that's probably the only app I'm actually got any interest in. So curious to see. Not loving the new look of the icons, must confess. And I know there's been lots of talk about that. But yeah, for their Pro suite, it looks very basic.
Yeah, I think the icons are dreadful. There was quite a good toot from somebody on Mastodon about if you flipped them round and went from the evolution of the original Pages icon to what it is now, if you'd gone in reverse from the one that is now to the one that started with, which was an ink pot with a quill next to it, it's like an icon designer getting better over time instead of worse over time. I don't think any of these are very good at all. No,
and I've said it all year. I think Microsoft are ahead of Apple on the icon game. I think their icons are they're not great, but they are way better than what we're looking at today. And it's such a shame because Mac icons used to be a thing of beauty.
Yeah, but that whole Mac operating system used to be a thing, obviously, and it's been interesting reading some of John Gruber's commentary this week about how if you go back and you look at what we had maybe 5 versions of the operating system ago, it was the better. You could see items, you could see what an active window was, you could see where your scroll bars were. You know, you didn't have stupid rounded corners, you could resize windows easily because you wouldn't miss the corners of them because they're too rounded. Did you see all the controversy about that? About if you want to start resizing your window, you need to click outside the boundary of the window to actually get it to resize. All your targets were in the right place, things worked more efficiently. And your point about Microsoft's icons is, I think we're probably on a tipping point where they become Microslop as well. That as they start to build more and more with their stuff with Copilot, we're going to see a degeneration of their icons too. And some of them aren't great either. It's kind of much of a muchness.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Because it used to be a real art form, and now it's just an afterthought, and I don't like it.
I don't like it. Another thing that we might not like is the second announcement from Google and Apple this week, which is Apple have pretty much decided that their foundation models for Apple Intelligence will not be Apple models, they will be Google models.
How do you feel? I'm frowning because I'm not sure how I feel about that. How do you feel about that?
I'll tell you why I don't like it. So I have used Gemini a bit. It's not a bad LLM. Particularly when it comes to coding, and that's what I largely use LLMs for, is for a little bit of advice about coding and things like that, because they're quicker often than, they've replaced Stack Overflow. That's what they've done. Whereas once upon a time I'd have spent ages combing through Stack Overflow and making the code look like mine in order to get it work. Now I just ask the chatbot, and that's fine. I think that's a reasonable thing as long as you understand what it is you're getting back from it and you implement it carefully. That's okay. Not to rewrite your whole program for you from the start. Here's my problem with this, is that you're going to have Gemini powering the 2 dominant smartphone platforms in the world. So you immediately have market dominance in LLMs from one company. Google now own mobile LLMs. End.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It's very interesting that this press release was on Google's website, not on Apple's at all. So it's very strange how all this is playing out.
Doesn't that seem wrong to you, though? We're just talking about Google being a monopoly in search, and we're seeing Gemini grow as a platform, from that point of view, and now it's embedded in all of our smartphones.
And our desktops.
And well, more on that later, I think. But this seriously gives me pause. I think that for a long time we've been talking, and we're going to talk in the main show more about this, about how the dominance of a couple of big tech brands is becoming all the more apparent all the time.
Yep.
And this is just like underscore highlighted, multiple ticks, daggers around it to say, yeah, and get used to it because it's not going to get any better. It's just going to get more embedded. And the duopoly that Google and Apple have isn't going away anytime soon. And Apple are even sacrificing more of that to the company that, let's face it, when Google got fined for their antitrust thing for, paying for search to be in Firefox and paying for to be the default engine on iOS, they didn't get censured for that. We were all expecting Apple to have to install a different default search engine. That's not going away. So not only are the default search on the phones, they're now the default intelligent agent on the phones as well.
Yeah, I agree with you here. Google have ended up playing a blinder. As a business, they must be patting themselves on the back because, like you say, they're now powering 100% of smartphones in the Western world. Like, it's crazy, isn't it?
It blows my mind. So I'm sure from Apple's point of view, they're going to end up with a good working LLM inside of their phones.
Well, they're backed into a corner. Apple have been backed into a corner. They dropped the ball. They missed the boat. Whatever analogy you want to use, and this is their way out of it. So they've had to eat a little bit of humble pie, I think. We're going to partner with Google.
But it's quite a lot of humble pie because John, I can't say his name, Giandrea, who was the head of AI, came from Google to work at Apple. Couldn't get any of Apple's stuff to work because it's not the DNA of the company. And as I was reflecting on that and thinking, the reason they didn't do search is probably because it was never a priority. They're a product company. And I think even Apple are beginning to struggle to see what their product is. If you pick up a piece of their hardware, that's the product. I think they've lost focus entirely on the software. And that shows in LLMs, it shows in the quality of the interfaces we use, the UIs, the errors we see with liquid glass. I genuinely think they've got a problem. And as their attention ever more turns to their services revenue and what they can just charge you per month, as witnessed by the story we just talked about a minute ago with the subscription for their apps. This is just going to suffer more. So they're just handing more and more things over to Google. What will they be? Just a fancy hardware manufacturer at some point that runs Google operating systems?
It is a worry, isn't it?
Is it? I mean, I think this is a good point for all of us to really consider how we use technology in our lives and what we use it for, and what we're, I know the corporate side of you go, well, you just pick Microsoft and on you go, or you just pick Google and on you go. But I think from a European point of view, the way things are at the moment, that's going to become challenged, if it's not already being challenged, by what's going on across the world.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think the writing's on the wall a little bit of, why aren't you using something closer to home? There's a real opportunity here for a European, Linux distro to actually get a bit of a lead in and a way into, actually, if you did that and provided corporate support, you would probably have your way in, and package it with a LibreOffice. You can see people looking to acquire that kind of thing and actually start moving away from big American tech.
I think it's entirely a possibility, isn't it? So it's interesting to me, and I think let's hold that thought, and we'll come back to it a little bit.
Yeah, let's move on.
I think that's probably quite important. Right, should we do media?
Yeah, let's do some media. I've not got a lot to add here, sadly. I've been quite a week.
So, me too, actually. I've only really sort of done two things this week. One is I rewatched the first season of Race Across the World, which is a BBC show that you can get on the iPlayer, as I frantically Google for something, not Google, using my search engine to find Race Across the World. You can get it on iPlayer in the UK. I think it's available on other platforms around the world, and there's various variants of it as well. The Danes have their own version of it, for example. But I quite enjoyed the last season of it, but I thought, actually, I don't really remember what happened in the first season. So I went back and I've watched the first 3 episodes of season 1 again. What an absolutely terrific show it is. And I think they had the essence of it absolutely right in the first season. The graphics and things aren't quite as fancy, but they picked good competitors. It was close racing, and the concept of, here's London, get yourselves to Singapore without flying in a smartphone and a credit card, worked incredibly well. And if you haven't watched it recently, I'd say go back and give it a go.
It is very cool. And am I right in thinking in the first episode they bump into the guy off Have I Got News for You?
Paul Merton,
which is just awesome. Like, I assume that wasn't set up. I just thought it was really cool. It is really good, that first one. I was a bit of a sad though, because one of the teams had to drop out, didn't they, if I remember correctly, because of for family reasons, which is completely fair enough. But they got it right from the get-go, and like you say, they've just had a bigger production budget, I think, as life's gone on. They've probably got more cameras and obviously do fancier graphics now, but they got the concept just perfect.
It's a great show, and the drama's all there. It's got a bit of everything. It's got a bit of competitiveness. It's got some, tears and sadness for people getting over things, or things have happened in their lives recently that they're trying to adjust to. So I just loved it. I've really enjoyed watching season 1 again. I'm looking forward to finishing off.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Second thing I managed to watch, I went back for some reason and decided to watch the Lego movie, the original Lego movie that came out, I'll say here, 2014. Have you seen this?
Wow. I have, but not for ages.
What a terrific film it is. It's just fun. It's very inventive. It's written by Lord and Miller, who also did the Across and Into the Spider-Verse movies. Very talented pair. And it's just terrific. I like the sort of meta commentary about now Lego comes with instructions and you must build things the way they are in the instructions, versus when I was a kid, I just got a box of Lego and had to build whatever was in my imagination. And then how toys are now become acceptable to grown-ups and what that means. It's just a very clever movie with some standout voice talent in it as well. And Chris Pratt is even quite good in it. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed watching it again.
No, agreed. It is a good movie.
I'm glad you think so. You didn't watch anything at all this week, no?
Not overly. Did I talk about the F1 movie? I watched the F1 movie with my youngest son, who's 12.
What movie?
F1.
Oh.
He quite enjoyed it, but he was like, Dad, I thought you said this character's in it. Just no patience to wait for the story to unfold, which was mildly frustrating. But other than that, I quite enjoyed it for about the second or third time I've seen it. Fair
enough. Still haven't watched it yet. I've no real desire to.
Top Gun in cars.
Yeah, it's Formula One though.
It's all right. They've done a good job of stitching together a fictitious team, people in the real world. I think that's that should be watched, because I thought that was quite cool.
I think the thing that's surprising me most about things I haven't watched is how uninterested I am in going back to The Night Manager.
Ooh. I enjoyed The Night Manager 1 and 2. I haven't seen 3 yet, but I actually quite enjoyed it, and I think it was because I really enjoyed Series 1. I watched it 3 or 4 times, so I really knew the characters and the story.
I mean, I enjoyed
Series.
Series. Fair enough. I enjoyed Series 1 of The Night Manager, but I was just so nonplussed by the first episode of Season 2. I think because it had been 10 years and they didn't do a very good job with a recap, I was just like, oh, what's happening now? Oh, he's actually a spy now as opposed to just some guy behind... I was a bit... you know?
He was always a spy.
Was he always a spy? I don't think that comes over very well in the first season, or I've just forgotten it.
It does, because he's interfacing with Olivia Colman, who's working, one of the secret agencies, and there's some baddies at the River House, which is the big MO6 buildings. So it is all there, but he's less spy. I think he's leaning more into being this night manager character. I quite enjoyed it. The book was good. It's probably one of the first season is one of the better book adaptations I've seen, other than Slow Horses. But I thought season 2 was okay, but it's got a bit more. It's not quite as gritty, I think, as the first one. The first one was a lot slower and a bit more steady paced.
Maybe I should give it another go. I'll try and lose my cynicism.
We'll go back and rewatch Series 1 because it was fantastic.
Maybe. I don't know. Race Across the World appeals to me more. All right. Games?
Yeah, go for it.
Neither of us have played any games, so we're going to talk about this one.
I did play Quake 2 on the Nintendo Switch and completed it, which I don't think I've ever done before. And I've just been enjoying my Switch. So I've just playing games on my Switch, and I've just been quite enjoying it.
Why didn't you put it in the show notes then, Chris?
Because I'm a bad person.
I'll let you go away and find a link for Quake 2 on the Switch. I didn't like Quake 2 very much. I remember being all excited to buy it after the original Quake because it was really talked up in the computer games magazines. And I remember thinking the graphics were brown. Even for their day, they were quite brown. And looking back at some screenshots and things like that, I still think it looks quite brown. But it lacked a certain inventiveness in the bad guys and the setting. It was just like generic sci-fi shooter. And for that, I don't think I could forgive it. It didn't have the generational leap from Doom to Quake with the 3D engine. It was just a bit meh.
I'd concur. I'm always just played it through because I enjoyed Quake 1. It's nowhere near as good. And I don't want to make a scary game, but it's just not even scary. It just doesn't have the presence of Quake. I just wanted to play it through. I did. There were some nice lighting effects on it, which were sometimes a bit of a distraction, but it wasn't as scary. Some of the levels weren't as good. And what really annoyed me is you have to go back and forth on levels quite a bit, and I don't like that concept. I think it's much better to play the level through and move on, rather than you're playing level through and then you have to come back to that level and do something else and then go back to another level, and that didn't really sit well with me.
Yeah, it wasn't a great game. Quake 3, however, was the game that sort of really pushed multiplayer shooters to the fore.
Yeah, see, that was lost on me because I wasn't fussed about multiplayer.
Quake 3 Tournament, what a game.
No, you're thinking of Unreal.
Quake 3 Arena, Quake 3 Arena,
3
sorry.
Arena, yes.
Yeah. Unreal Tournament was great, so. Something we can talk about a little bit, I think you and I have both talked about our admiration for some of Peter Molyneux's games in the past, so Populous 2, Warmonger, Magic Carpet, things of that nature. He made some fantastic games back in the day on the Amiga and early PC games, as well as Dungeon Keeper, Black and White. I'm running out of Theme Park, Theme Hospital. Those games were all Bullfrog games that came with that. Things went a bit wrong for him after he joined Microsoft, though. A bit of a legend in the computer gaming world, certainly the British computer gaming world, and I think he had a couple of releases on Xbox, none of which I can remember. They were sort of vaguely British RPG games, I think. And then the last game I bought of his was called Goddess, which was community funded on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I remember that game. I think I may have bought that at some point.
Yeah, it was so bad they had to pull it off Steam anyway because it launched with so many bugs following it. So you won't be able to download it and play it anyway. Anyway, his last game, the game he's going to do last, is called Masters of Albion, and there's a trailer available for it now. It was interesting reading this article on Rock Paper Shotguns to see how dodgy he'd gone. Apparently, he released a town builder game a couple of years ago that had NFTs built into it, and somebody sold a real plot of land in the game for £670,000 in cryptocurrency. And we all know NFTs were a Ponzi scheme, but yeah, that's a bad look, Peter.
Yeah, it's not great, is it?
Yeah. A couple of his games had blockchains built into them during it, so that was kind of the purpose of them. And then there were some other bits and pieces. So he certainly attracted a lot of flack in late years, which is probably why he vanished for a while, and now this is going to be his last game, which is a shame, really, because, it's interesting when you go and see how Bullfrog started. Peter Molyneux just wanted to be famous and make money, and more of a business guy than sort of a computer game developer, but then obviously had a bit of a vision because, the games we've talked about were huge, and the one that I really remember is Syndicate. Syndicate I played to death on my Amiga back in the day, and then a string of hits like Populous and the ones I've already mentioned. So I think this is a bit sad. I kind of want it to be a good game, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's a bit complicated, isn't it?
Let's not forget Dungeon Keeper, Theme Park. I mean, I played those a huge amount.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see. I mean, Dungeon Keeper, Black and White, Fable. Black and White was never the game I thought it was going to be. Your godly influence was on a big monstery thing rather than, and it was going to be the next big thing. So yeah, like I say, a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah, he's had a very interesting career, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. Should we do a main show?
Let's do it.
It's going to be a slightly odd one, I think. I'm going to flip back to that for us to talk for a minute. So yeah. All the stuff with Denmark and Greenland and what we were talking about before in the news, it's interesting to take a minute to reflect on our choices of software and hardware and what we're using in terms of services. So I think from the outset, I want to say, I don't think anybody should immediately drop everything they're doing and go and live in a cave with a tinfoil hat on, not even me. I think you can take a more measured approach to it, but I think it would be judicious, as you've already said, either from a corporate point of view for what you do for a living or what you do personally, in the same way that occasionally you make choices in terms of what you eat. If you decide that you want to be fitter because you want to be a vegetarian or a pescatarian, or you're just not happy with the quality of the food you get, therefore you make different choices. That choosing what we as consumers and businesses buy in terms of our software and what we interact with should probably deserve as much attention of that. Do you think that's a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, I think so. I think sadly we've gone through the bit where there was more peace in the world, I guess, and people weren't even worried about using things from other countries, whereas we seem to have regressed a little bit here, which I think is a bit sad.
Yeah, and it's been fairly obvious if you listen to this podcast that the big American tech companies, and they are American, let's face it, there are of course other makers of software and hardware across the world, but the big players are Microsoft, Apple, Google, Meta, Amazon, who between them run, develop for, make APIs for, are the backbone for an awful lot of the things we do with our computers. The software we're allowed to run on them, particularly when it comes to phones and things, and just how we interact. You see, when there's an AWS outage, half the internet goes off.
Yeah, because you don't realise that half the internet's using AWS as its backbone.
Yeah. And you see it with things like CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike happened. Loads of Windows PCs went down across the world. It's just very interconnected and very dependent on a couple of companies. And what we see is we're very dependent on the grace of the American government in terms of what we put into our cloud storage, what we're allowed to do in terms of tariffs and what we buy. And every pound, yen, euro, dollar, Australian dollar that we spend ultimately ends up mostly back with those companies, because let's face it, they're not great at paying their taxes in these countries either.
Fair point.
Thank you. So I just thought it would be worth reflecting a little bit on what we do and how we use things. So I think the first thing that's probably worth stating out the gate is phones are a problem. If you're looking to get away from big tech a little bit, and from the outset, I don't think tomorrow you should go and throw away your Windows computer or your Apple computer just because it's running an American company's thing. Get the value out of the device that you've got, but you could maybe reflect a little bit on what software you're using or how you're using it or what services you engage with. So phones are a problem. I think on a computer, be it a Mac up to an M2 or a Windows machine, you can go and install an alternative operating system. And again, I don't think necessarily everybody needs to do that. If it's an old computer and it won't upgrade to Windows 11, absolutely go and have a look at Linux. I think it's maybe a way you should go. Most people aren't going to cope without a bit of hand-holding and support. I think it's easier than it ever used to be, but I think it's a bit of a mountain to climb for some. So I'll just say that phones are a problem. You can only really buy a phone with Google on it, or with Android on it, or you can only buy a phone with iOS on it. Linux phones exist, but only in the smallest possible way, and I don't think you should go near them. So I think if you want to use a smartphone for your banking, paying for your parking, buying things in the supermarket and all the rest of it, unfortunately, the reality is you have two choices.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think moving away on the phone is just too hard, because where do you go? Because you're going to want to get the car parking app because they don't allow you to pay with cash or credit card, for example. You're going to want to, do something, but, get your boarding pass for the airplane or whatever it may be. I think it would be too inconvenient right now to do anything other than have one of the big two. Well, there's only the big two, really.
But that's the problem. There is only the duopoly that is those two things. There is no European equivalent. If you're in China, there is a Chinese equivalent. Is it Tizen? Oh, I got that wrong. Was that
sounds
Samsung?
Right, I can't remember.
That might have been Samsung's thing. But even then, I think the version of Android that is on some smartphones in China, Xiaomi phones, for example, is so heavily customized that you have kind of got, but then you've got to install what they tell you to install anyway. So I think this is a problem. I mean, you touched on a couple of points there that, let's face it, you could walk through an airport potentially with a boarding pass you'd printed out yourself, even if you didn't have the app. They might not print it for you anymore, but you should still have a barcode that you could scan. I think most car parks will still allow you to have contactless payment. It would be very inconvenient not to have your map in your car or be able to quickly transfer somebody some money. So, I mean, it would be convenience more than anything else you were losing. You could potentially carry a dumb phone and then just be a bit more prepared.
Yeah, that's true. And that's probably the key, is being prepared, and prepared for some friction as well.
Yeah, so again, I'm not mandating that everybody throws their smartphones away and just runs around with a wallet again and a handful of printout, but I think it's just worth considering what you've installed on your phone and how you make use of it, and maybe you could cut out some of the other elements that come with it and just stick to the essentials, I think is my thought. So on that, you can buy not open source phones, but more repairable phones. We've talked about it before. This is in Dutch, I think. This is the Fairphone. It's the 6th iteration of the Fairphone. It's a modular smartphone. If you break something, you can swap things out. It does come with Android installed, but you're able to install other operating systems on it as well. I think Jolla or Graphene OS are things you can install on that, and so there is an alternative if you did not want to buy a phone from an American manufacturer locked down with that particular operating system. And I think it's worth mentioning Graphene OS if you do choose to go this route. So Graphene OS is it's amazing, actually. If you ever watch anybody install this, you plug your Google Pixel or whatever USB-C Android phone into this, and it will install it directly from the web browser. You don't need to install any particular piece of software or anything like that. You need to unlock the bootloader, which takes a couple of steps. You can't just do it. But once you've done that, if you click this Install Graphene OS button, you'll get to a point where it'll just install from the browser.
Wow, that's kind of blowing my mind. I'm a little curious on this one.
It's pretty cool.
I wouldn't mind to try this out at some point just to see it. How good or bad is the experience once you've done it?
The interesting thing about Graphene OS is that you can install Android Play Store things on it in a sandbox. So if you absolutely must have your banking app or Google Maps on there or the Play Store, you can install it and it will sandbox it and not give it give it access to any of the other elements of your phone. So if you've got secure notes, it won't share them with Google. So it's quite an interesting way of going about it, and it maintains, because it's built on the Android open source part, it maintains a lot of the background, APIs and things like that a smartphone like this might need, but actually it gives you a lot more granularity over what Google have access to on your phone, and I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, that is quite interesting, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So it's just worth thinking about that if you become truly incensed with this and don't trust Apple or Google anymore, there are alternatives. It's not going to work on every Android phone in the world, but I just think it's interesting that this is being developed. Google have said they're only going to drop the AOSP open source project twice a year as opposed to 4 times a year, which is the way they used to do it. But you're still going to have an operating system that you can sandbox and maybe have the best of both worlds. If you must pay for your parking, then you can sandbox it on this phone and you can go forward without the big American company having its claws too deep into you.
Yeah, okay. And how long though is it before Google then go down to once a year and then less than that? That'd be my one concern.
But in all this, you have to keep in mind that if things continue, worsening at the rate that they are, then you will think that other things will become available, because there are some very clever developers in the UK, the EU, in South America, other parts of the world, that will start to push back against this and begin to develop their own things. If we think in China, they have got an everything app that you could, and in Japan there are apps that it doesn't really matter what phone you've got, and the manufacturers of the smartphone have very little say in that. There is nothing to say that kind of thing won't begin to rise, and an alternative will become available, but you have this in the meantime.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Just a thought. So that's sort of a hardware point of view.
And that's probably the hardest one we've started with, I think.
It probably is. And then I think we should just talk about computers a little bit. So obviously the next thing is, you and I are both on Macs at the moment. This podcast started from Macs. It's not a surprise that, that we're kind of Apple positive, and have been, or maybe less so. We have in the last.
We started off very positive.
Very positive, but isn't it interesting, the illustration of how the company's gone, that it's kind of done this to us, that's kind of grinding us down? I just bought 2 new Macs for employees at work. I bought them to the university because they're the right thing to have. So let's say from the outset that from a corporate point of view, it's very difficult to conflate these things. However, if I was making the purchase this week, I think I might have made different choices genuinely, because I really do worry about how things are going. But anyway, not to get into that, you have got options. So if you are a Mac user and you think you've had enough and you're on a M1 or M2 Mac, you can install a variant of Linux, the name of which has completely escaped me. That's terrible, but it will come back to me before the end of the podcast. And you can have a version of Arch Linux running on your Fedora Linux, running on your Mac, with almost everything working on it, which is quite good considering the closed nature of Apple's ecosystem.
Have you ever done this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, part of me wouldn't mind to try it, but I think I kind of need a spare Mac to do it on. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't do it in the middle. Yeah, interrupt my work, because I do use my Mac for work as well, but it's something I wouldn't mind to have a play around with.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting thing to Asahi Linux. That's the name of the thing.
Yes.
It's come back to me. Asahi Linux. Again, because Apple changed their sort of silicon development, sort of fundamentals in the silicon from the M2 to the M3, so they haven't been able to get this to work on M3, M4 Macs yet. However, if you've got an earlier Mac, this could potentially give it a new lease of life, particularly when the M1 becomes end of life, which is probably next year. Let's face it, it's going to be 6 years old next year, so it's not a million miles away.
I'm not sure if we go one more year, because they're going to end of life Intel next year, aren't they?
Well, maybe 2 years then. But at some point it's going to go away. So I think it's really good you've got the projects like this that are there. This is going to give your computer a new lease of life. You're going to be able to run, most of the things that your Mac runs on now. They were very careful about sound drivers and things like that. And you will get a fairly default Linux experience with all the great battery life. However, like I say, I don't think you should rush out and do this unless you're interested. There are sacrifices. I think, for example, plugging in external monitors doesn't work terribly well with this yet. The developers are working on this, but they're not paid to do this for a living. This is sort of their hobby project. So it's amazing that it works at all, and they've managed to reverse engineer it this far. So that's an option on Macs. If you're on M3, M4, and M5, you're stuck, unfortunately, or you're just using an Apple operating system. However, if you're on the Windows, Wintel side of the fence, or the x86 side of the fence, you have many, many more options. We've talked about these before. There are a bunch of Linux distros that you can just go and install. I think you installed one on one of your kids' laptops at one point. I think you put Mint on one of your kids' laptops.
You're going to have to say that again. Yeah, we did put Mint on there at some point. One of them, I think it was my eldest son, tried out, but he did not stick with it. He's very much become a Windows person because of the gaming culture and his mates.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, okay. So it's just to say a lot of Linuxes are open source. They've not got no specific location in the world. Anyone can do them. If you're specifically looking for a European variant, OpenSUSE is a German Linux distribution. I don't want to say vendor, but let's say proprietor. So you can go and install that. You can have a lovely time with it. There are variants of it. This version is called Tumbleweed, which means it's an immutable distro. Immutable distros means you have a safeguarded partition in the same way that Macs work, where you don't change the kernel of the operating system while it's in place. Only authenticated downloads can update it. You restart it, it installs the kernel patches, and go from there. So they're more secure against hackers. And there's a few more of these immutable distros starting to appear. I thought it was worth mentioning OpenSUSE just because it's a European distro and it's not particularly embedded in America.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. And I think we used to use a variant of this probably 20 years ago.
It's been around a long time. Equally, Debian which started in the UK. Obviously, the Linux kernel itself was written by a Finnish developer, Linus Torvalds. We did a show about that when I was in Finland. But Debian started in the UK and kind of owns Linux in many ways now. The sort of Ubuntu, which is built on Debian, was one of the original operating systems that had a good package manager, solved a lot of the dependency hells. It's still very much regarded as the most stable Linux distribution you can get, so worth checking out Debian as well. And then last but not least, and I thought of your son actually as I was going to make this recommendation, Chris, is Bazzite. So if all you really care about is computer gaming, there is a variant of Fedora Linux in this case called Bazzite, which is designed to run really well on gaming PCs. So it's got all the graphics drivers built in. It launches in Steam Big Picture mode, I think. It's it's Fedora underneath it all, but it's very, very stable, and you can do an awful lot with it. So I think if you're a gamer, and we'll talk about gaming a little bit more in a minute, Bazzite is maybe where you should be looking.
Interesting. Perhaps I should take a look at this myself.
I think it's worth a look. I mean, it's different, and as with all things, like when I tried the Android phone 2 years ago now, you can't just give it a couple of days and decide it doesn't work. You've got to try and do your day job or your gaming or whatever it is you're doing. You can't just think, oh, it's a bit too hard and go away from it. So that would be my recommendation, is try something like this and see how you get on. Don't just give up on it straight away because it's a bit tricky.
That's how I ended up going iPad only. I said, right, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to use an iPad to do my job for a month, because then I've done all the monthly things I did in my job. And once I got through 1 month, it got easier because I knew I could do everything. And you're probably right on this. You need to give it, a good proportion of time to see if you can do everything on it and if you actually enjoy using it more.
Exactly. And you're not encumbered by the thought that if this was a Windows computer, which in most cases it would be, you've got all the strings that Microsoft are putting at you these days with Copilot built into it and all the things we've talked about repeatedly in this podcast over time going on. So I think it's worth considering for you, these things. However, as I said from the outset, if all you do from this list that we're going through is change a couple of things, that's a good start. Change your search engine. Think about the things that you're installing in a computer.
Yeah, just think about can you use the alternatives, and some of them are easier than others. Like we say, change your search engine. Actually, is pretty straightforward.
Yep. The other thing you can do, and I haven't got any links for this because it's going to be fairly obvious, is change your browser. So rather than using the one that comes with your computer, Edge, Chrome, maybe Safari, maybe have a look at Firefox, have a look at Vivaldi, which I'm showing today, have a look at Arc, have a look at Flurp and all these other things that I've talked about over the years. It's a Firefox variant that's open sourced. Well, Firefox is open source anyway. That's how you can build all these secondary browsers on the Firefox code. Don't look at Chromium. Look at other things and maybe support them, and try not to just go with the standard all the time. It may be there is the odd website that demands Chrome, but they're pretty few and far between these days.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't really use Chrome. I haven't ever really used Chrome. And you used to occasionally get it that people would push you towards Chrome, but I'm not seeing it at all anymore.
Yeah, but I think it's important to go and try a Firefox, a Vivaldi, an Arc, or whatever instead, rather than just going with the default, Safari comes with the computer, therefore it's the best. It's probably not. And let's face it, Safari is baked into the operating system. You only get an update to Safari when they give you a point update. And that's true of the iOS and that's true of the Mac. So having something that's updated a bit more frequently, that has support for extensions and ad blockers and your password manager, whatever it is probably quite important.
Yeah, and Safari just doesn't get a lot of updates anyway, really. And a lot of browsers, if I'm being honest, are all very similar. That's probably an easy one to change, a bit like search engines. They all look very similar, and browsers have gone that way too.
Yep. Then what you search on, we talked about Google being the default. There's a whole bunch of these things. We said most people couldn't name them. Ecosia, who every so often they'll plant a tree based on your search things, so that's them trying to have some green credentials. I think it's a decent level of search. You've got things like Quant, another decent search engine that's out there that they say the search engine values you as a user, not the product. Immediately it's trying to get you to install Chrome extensions, which I always find fascinating. But if you're searching for things with these, they're probably going to come up with the same sort of results that you're going to want from any. BBC is there when you search for it. It's not difficult to try out a couple of these things and see how the search is.
Yeah, and they're all formatted in a similar way to what you're used to. So like I said, I think changing is actually not too scary now.
Exactly. And then, just to mention it, DuckDuckGo as well is another one that's quite good. It's what Chris uses. It's not a bad search engine. given how rubbish Google is these days, the amount of ads that masquerade as actual hits, it's horrendous. So you might actually find your life gets a little bit better given how bad Google has got. Any of these are probably a decent alternative. And then there's the paid option, which is Kagi, which I paid for a few months. It's very good. It's like Google used to be, and you actually get the results you want. However, I decided I didn't want to keep paying for things, which is the problem, isn't it? That's why a lot of this software continues to be the default, is because people don't want to pay. So in some cases here, I think it might actually be worth paying for things that if you really value it, like your email provider, and not just going with Gmail when we get there, but it's just a thought.
No, I'd agree, and I can wholeheartedly endorse DuckDuckGo. I and my family all use it because I set it to be their default years ago, and I don't think anybody's really noticed that they're not using Google, because it just once you actually search, it looks the same. It does a very good job, and so we've been a DuckDuckGo household for, I don't know, 5-10 years, a long time.
But again, it's like you say, your browser and your search engine are a simple thing to change, and it could have a big impact on promoting another company, actively getting some competition into the market, be having greener credentials, whatever the metric is that you care about, and it's giving you a little bit of independence from that large accepted corporate culture.
Agreed.
When it comes to gaming, Steam is still a thing. Steam is American as well, let's not face it, even though Gabe Newell now lives in New Zealand, I think. Most Linux distributions will support, the Mac supports Steam as well, obviously, although not very well. Most Linux distributions these days will run 98% of games. Where they won't run are the big AAA titles like Battlefield 6, Call of Duty, and the competitive shooters. Apex Legends, I don't know, or Valorant, because these games depend on kernel-level anti-cheat, which actually, when you think about it, is really egregious to begin with. You are allowing a games provider to install something at the level of your kernel in Windows to make sure that you're not cheating. That's where all your really secure stuff happens, and you're allowing that to happen?
Yeah, agreed on that one. I don't play these kinds of games, so it's never really been an issue for me. But I do agree with you. Like, to install something at the kernel level feels a little excessive.
So that goes against a lot of Linux stuff where you need full transparency of what's happening across your operating system. So I'm not surprised really that a lot of Linux distributions don't A, it doesn't exist, and B, they don't allow it. So Proton is a technology that will let you play almost all your Steam games on Linux. Great, have a lovely time. And Valve themselves push Linux instead. So well done, Valve. Even though you're an American company, you seem to be less problematic than others.
I would agree. Valve, from a perception standpoint, generally, like you say, appear to be less problematic than others. I think that is fair to call out.
If you're a super duper gamer, though, go and get a Switch or a PlayStation 5 and go and play your games there. And you can still play all these titles that you want.
Do you know what? Switch 2, I think I said when it came out it was very iterative, but I've really got on board with it. The bigger screen, the response, it's just so much quicker. And I've played more of my Switch 2 this year than anything else. And I've played a couple of games. I've completed 2 games on it. Even though they're old games, I just enjoyed playing it on that medium. Those games would probably be better if I played them on my PC because they were shooters. I'd have the mouse and keyboard. But I just generally enjoyed. I had the Switch with me. Generally enjoyed it. I bought that little dock I've got in my shed. It's just been a really nice experience.
You can pretty much use a mouse with a Switch too, can't you, these days, I think?
Yeah, you can, and I haven't. But
and
I should try it out.
The PlayStation 5 is the same. I know you can plug in a mouse and keyboard if that's the way you want to go.
I've never seen anybody do that.
It's a thing. Anyway, so AAA games like that, fine. Other than that, stick a Linux on there, or look at Steam and don't use the Microsoft Store. Even though it's an American company, I've got a lot of time for Steam, but We'll see how that goes. Moving on, you and I have talked a fair bit about Tailscale. Tailscale is kind of like a VPN. It connects all your distributed computers together. Again, it's a large American company. They don't get to see the data that's traveling on your network. They do get to see the connections you make. They do get to see the endpoints of things if you use them as a VPN, so that might be challenging. And again, it's another large American corporation that you're inviting into your home network. There are alternatives. NetBird is a European, I think they're German alternative that does pretty much the same thing as Tailscale, or there's an open source initiative called Hegseth, which makes use of the Tailscale client. So if you have the Tailscale client on iOS or on your computers or on your Linux machines, this removes the centralization node from being Tailscale the company to being you instead, and you can still use all the apps. A little more complicated to set up, but does give you that level of freedom over and above what's going on. So there are alternatives to things like Tailscale and VPNs too.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do there. I'm looking at the Ubiquiti stuff at the moment because I've installed that network. And I appreciate they're a big American company, but it's what I've got, so that's where I'm heading.
It's not the same thing, though. So all that's giving you is a WireGuard access point into your network. It's not allowing you to have a distributed network or connect to specific machines or from services from those machines or all the other sort of more more ethereal stuff that Tailscale gives you. So you can publish Tailscale endpoints as names with SSL certificates and do all that kind of stuff. So these technologies let you do that, whereas that's just a connection back to your home network.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I guess I don't often dial back into my house. It's just more for every now and again if I need to do something.
I use this kind of stuff all the time, so I'm big on it. So that's why it's one of the options on there.
You're more advanced than me.
Something I don't use, but I know people do, is Grammarly. Grammarly is for people who sort of struggle with their grammar when they type. This is another large American company that is watching everything you type and seeing how you type and the words that you use, and then feeding their own, intelligence, probably advertiser based on that. And you can pay a subscription for it too. This was an interesting open source project called Harper. It's a Python language that runs in a number of things at the moment, specifically I think Visual Studio Code and Emacs and NeoVim and Helix and Firefox. So if you're typing in a text box inside a Firefox, this will give you advice about your grammar, but it's run on your computer, not in somebody else's server farm, and will give you advice about your grammar. So if you're particularly challenged with that, this could be a good way forward for you. I think it runs in note-taking apps like Obsidian and things as well. So just an interesting open source project that was probably only going to grow over time.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Moving on, if you're a big fan of the Gmail suite, and I will hold my hands up and say I'm still a Gmail user, although I'm going to make more of an effort to come out of that. We used to say that if you didn't pay a price, you were the product, and that's very much the case with a lot of Google's technologies, and I've been a Gmail user for 20 plus years, so I'm quite embedded in it, even though I went to Fastmail to try and start moving myself out of that ecosystem, and we'll push that a bit more aggressively now. Paying for an email client, a Canadian email client, is a good thing, I think, but you've also got options like Proton, which is what we've got our show notes running on now. They do a very good password manager. They do their own LLM called Lumo. I got to say I'm quite impressed with their docs at the moment. It seems quite responsive, Chris. That's working well. And their password manager is very solid as well. It's not very expensive, and it's a Swiss company.
Yeah, always feel comfortable dealing with the Swiss, don't you?
Yeah, and they have a web-based mail app as well, in the same way that Gmail gives you that. So I think it might be worth taking a look at Proton, and I think you can do the whole move your domain to them as well. But there's lots of options when it comes to email. It's not just Gmail, people. There's lots of things out there.
Yeah, there are options. I've never used Gmail, so I'm quite happy I've dodged that bullet.
Yeah, you're still integrating with some Google services. In fact, we're talking in one now.
Yeah, I know. I'm not wholeheartedly out of it, but
yeah.
I don't know why. I can't explain why I've never been a Google person. I don't know.
So beyond changing your browser and your search engine, the next most simple thing you can do is change your Office suite. So the Microsoft Office suite, I think it's called Copilot 365 now. I don't think it's even called Office anymore.
Oh, it's all going that way, isn't
it? It's all right. It's got honed over time to be sort of the default for what we all do in universities and businesses and schools and all the rest of it, except for those that use Google Docs, of course. However, LibreOffice is a fantastic drop-in replacement for Microsoft Office. It comes with a database suite, a word processing suite, a presentation suite, and a spreadsheet. You can set the default to save to and open to docx files or pptx files. It has markup for if you're reviewing documents, which is what I do a lot in the university. It's very, very solid. It doesn't crash very much. You can make it look like Word with the same sort of ribbon design to it, rather than the sort of mess of buttons you get when it first launches. And it doesn't cost you anything, and you don't need to pay a subscription, and there's no AI in it.
That's quite cool.
Yeah. You could do this now. You can install it on your computer, not use Pages, not use Word, and just give it a go for a couple of weeks and see how you get on with LibreOffice. And frankly, I think it's worth it. I've been approached by two people in my company within the university independently. One of them works for me and one of them doesn't, saying they've had enough of the microslop that's appearing in their office. They don't trust where their documents are being stored in Azure or Office 365. What are the options? And I said, well, you've got this, and there's a couple of other things. Both of them have been using this for over the last week, possibly 10 days, and are perfectly happy with it. It's doing what they want them to do in a corporate environment. So genuinely, this could be a simple thing for you to swap. You don't need to change your operating system. You just change your defaults to open with LibreOffice instead.
Yeah, that is quite cool. And sometimes that's it. The biggest bit is just making the change so you force documents to open, and then once you're there, you just start using it by default in essence.
Yep. The third option is if you've got a bit more control over your stuff or you want to run it on a server is Nextcloud. Nextcloud is a more or less drop-in replacement for the Google Proton, any of these suites, and you've got entirely your own control over it. It does need a bit of a beefy computer to run on. It's quite a beast, but it does have calendaring, it does have email, it does have the ability to do video conferencing, file sharing, cloud syncing, all that kind of stuff with your devices. And they have a one-click installer that if you have got enough compute in your house or you're going to pay for a VPS or something like that, you can get up and running with it. It's a really powerful thing, Nextcloud.
Yeah, that's cool.
We did use it briefly at the start, but I put it on a Raspberry Pi and it didn't run very well.
Oh, okay.
So next time I'd learn my lesson. But for the moment, I think I'm quite happy with Proton and things like that. But if you want ultimate control, you install something like this.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And we did play with it, didn't we?
And it's German, and it's open source, so you can do what you like with it. If you're a Photoshop user, there's a couple of alternatives. We've talked about Pixelmator, although that's now also owned by a large American company in the form of Apple. There is GIMP, if you're a Linux person, which is the GNU image manipulation program. Or there's Photopea, which is a web-based thing that effectively copies Photoshop as far as I can see. Even the keyboard shortcuts are the same.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Not that I now choose Photoshop anymore.
No, neither do I. There is you can pay them if you want, but as you'll see from the toolbar here on the left in the web browser for the people watching YouTube, it's Photoshop. It can import PSD files. You can do a huge amount with it. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
It's really cool. So check out Photopea if you're a Photoshop user, and it doesn't even need to cost you any money. When it comes to video editing, there's what I use to edit the podcast, and lots of YouTubers do as well. It's called DaVinci Resolve. It's by a company called Blackmagic, who are an Australian company. What they do is they make control decks for video editing, and they vaguely sell some software as well. I use the free version of it. It doesn't cost me anything. There is a professional studio version, which is like Final Cut Pro used to be. There's a one-time $300 open fee, and then you've got access to it for years and years and years and years. There are completely open source things like Shotwell or Kdenlive, which are good enough, so you don't have to use Final Cut Pro. You don't need to use Adobe Premiere. So there are good options and professional options when it comes to video editing as well. Moving on to the last two sections. For password management, I know you use Apple Passwords, but again, you're kind of stuck with just Apple devices and a little bit of Windows when it comes to that. And again, it's the big American corporation. So I am using at the moment a thing called Vault Warden, which is run on my own estate here on a server I've got. It makes use of another company's front end. The company is called Bitwarden. So you can use Bitwarden's tools to connect to your own server because they're both open source at the back end. Somebody has built this. Bitwarden is a service that will sell you. I don't know if they're American, actually, to be honest. But the fact that it's open source and you can go and run it yourself, the vaults are compatible. I exported from 1Password to ProtonPass to my Vault Warden that's managed by myself. I won't need to pay anybody any money for my password management next time, and I'm not locked just into the Apple ecosystem for my passkeys and my two-factor authenticators and all that kind of stuff. I am the master of my own domain. It does mean I've got to back it up and remember to do all that kind of stuff, but actually it gives me a lot more freedom in terms of what's actually there. So I'm a big fan of the fact that this company has open sourced their stuff and that I can make use of the solid tools the corporate tools to make use of the back end open source stuff if I want to, or I can just run it in a web browser.
My only concern with password managers is I think I need to get my head around, I don't know why, I feel like I trust the big companies more than I trust open source software. I can't explain why. It's just
haven't we just been through why we shouldn't trust the big companies?
Yeah, we have, and you're right. I don't know. Passwords I don't know. I can't explain it.
It's running in your own thing, and it's open source. Anybody can get at the code and check the cryptographic contents of it. We've seen how many security flaws Microsoft have had over the years. We've seen how many security flaws Apple have had over the years. This is in the public domain that people can hack on it all the time.
You're right, and I like I said, I can't logically explain why I have this concern, but I do.
I think you need to get over it, Chris.
I do. No, I do. I do need to get over it in my own time.
And last but not least, for moving away from photographs from Google Photos, Apple Photos, I'm using a thing called Image, which is again run on my own server with my own cryptographic stuff on it, on my own passwords, and it is a drop-in replacement more or less for Apple Photos. Every picture I take on my phone is backed up to it. I have all my pictures. I imported all my old Google Photos and Apple Photos into it. There was a little program to do it. It was very, very easy. And now I've got gigabytes, hundreds of gigabytes worth of photos backed up on my own estate and my own NAS that I know exactly where it is, that works beautifully well.
Yeah, that one I'm more scared of. I think just because I share photos with my family, but it's hard getting out of ecosystems, right?
Yeah. What have we always said in this podcast, Chris? What's the cost of getting out?
It's the cost of getting in, it's the cost of leaving.
So you need to be able to know how to get out if it goes wrong. And at the moment, things are going wrong. You need to look at the cost of getting out. You need to explore this stuff now.
Yeah. My head just can't get around it. I just don't know where. I don't know where to start. And maybe I need to start with some of the easy stuff.
Start with the easy stuff. Think about where you get your music from. Think about where you get your media from. You've been keen on buying your media for years. Just you're managing it yourself. It's just like it used to be back in the day.
Yeah, I do purchase a lot of videos. I don't do a lot of streaming services. Music I do stream all the time, and I was talking to you at the top of the show. I was thinking, should I go back and buy my music so I've got it? I don't know.
Like I say, I think it's important to start thinking about this stuff. And again, I'm going to reiterate, don't throw away all your stuff. Don't immediately cancel your Google subscriptions, but explore, change your defaults, try a different search engine, try a different browser, install LibreOffice, and give it a fair chance. It's not going to be the same thing. It's a different program. But the features that you want, can you search? Can you find the things you're looking for? Can you write the letter that you needed to? Can you edit the document somebody sent you? You probably can. You can probably do just as good a job with software that is more honest about where it's all going and more secure than what you're using now. And you're not having to pay some big corporate entity and serve ends that are becoming increasingly uncomfortable for those of us that are not in one particular country in the world.
Yeah, okay. No, I understand.
Right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Should we do an app of the week or any commentary on any of that?
I think you raised some good points. I think there are lots of alternatives. I think we've all fallen into a rut where we just use the easiest option. And like you say, with recent world events, the easy option doesn't always feel like the right option.
We can see where it's leading us is my concern, is that the slopification of everything that we're using, how terrible our Apple ecosystem has become, how they take us for granted in users, how we get treated in terms of being idiots for what we're allowed to install on our devices and all the rest of it. It's gone too far.
Yeah, it's bad days, isn't it?
It's very bad days, and it's made life harder again. I didn't think about this stuff for a decade, longer.
Agreed. I definitely didn't. I've been getting more techie, I think, in recent years, and I'm going back to my roots a little bit. And like you say, you're starting to think more about other things. It's like, not feeling very comfortable about it.
It's deeply uncomfortable. Anyway, I think that's enough soapbox and shouting and my tinfoil hat wearing, but I think just consider it. App of the week?
Yeah, do it.
So my app of the week is related to my last pick there of Image. It's called Image Frame. My server at the moment is actually an old laptop that I've got lying around. It's running, I think, 15 Docker containers. It's doing really well. Bless it. The Image server is running on my NAS elsewhere. But all it is a photo library. So you can go into that in the same way you can with Google, Apple or Google Photos. You can search for locations and people and albums and all that good stuff. As I've got a laptop sitting there that was previously showing a black screen with a login prompt because it's a Linux server, I wondered if there was a way of turning the screen into a digital photo frame. And there is, and it's called Image Frame. So I point it at my image server, I tell it what albums or what people I want it to do, I tell it whether I want a weather widget on it or not, and it'll just beautifully shows me all the pictures in that album or collection or of that people over whatever period I want it to. It's really smart. So I've made use of an old laptop. I was thinking if I had another screen for a Raspberry Pi lying around somewhere, I might have another one somewhere else, because it's really enchanting to be able to see your pictures all the time.
Yeah, that is cool. And we've all got billions of pictures, but we probably don't actually use them the best we could.
Yeah. So Image Frame, check it out. It's a really cool open source project that clicks into Image.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Thing of the week.
So I'm going to go with my Switch 2. I've loved playing on it. I've just played on it so much. It got me back into a bit of gaming, and I've really enjoyed it. Like I said, I was a bit flat on it, I think, when it first came out. But the more I've used it and just dipping in and out of it, I think it's actually pretty good, even though it's iterative, but it's fast. It's got a big screen, and that's kind of what I want. And I think there's some good games coming out. I keep giving Metroid Prime 4 the side eye, but it didn't have great reviews, but I'm a little tempted.
Yeah, you like your first-person shooters again, don't you?
Yeah, it's probably the sort of first sort of games I started playing in my beige box in the mid-90s. But I've just enjoyed it as a console, and the Switch is a great bit of hardware. The Switch 2 is just improved upon it.
Fair enough. When you go to read out the end credits of the show, Chris, please note I'm not on Blue Sky. I left Blue Sky following their invitation for the President of the United States to join them. So at that point, I was out.
Wow. Okay.
And on that bombshell, I think
this week.
On that bombshell, I think we can call this a show, Chris.
I think so. So if you want to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5minake@mastodon.scot. I am on Mastodon where I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You watch on YouTube by going to wakefromsleep.com and click on the YouTube link, or you drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.